John Warner Smith. Thank you, John, for that great introduction, and said some things about me that I hadn't heard in a long time. It feels good to be here this evening, and I want to just thank everyone for being out on a Wednesday evening to hear some poetry being read. Let me begin with a few introductions. My wife, Nora, is here, my road buddy, and my daughter, Joy. Your grandchildren are sitting there. Just raise your hands, guys. Devin, Layla, Autumn, Joy's children. Patrice Melnick, stand up, please. Patrice. Yeah. This wouldn't have been possible without Patrice's support. She wrote the nomination letter, and we all know Patrice, most of us, as being the founder of Festival of Words, a great gift to the state of Louisiana. And the guy in the back, the cool dude with the hat on. Stand up. Raise your hat. Bill Lavender. Lavender Ake, and publisher of Mohammed's Mountain, and a former instructor of mine, as well as Patrice, at the University of New Orleans. So I'm going to sort of move through a few poems as a gift to you this evening. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Good back there? And we'll kind of go slow, but do it right. My first book is actually Amanda LaPen's was, hey, Wayne, hey. I grew up with that guy. Grew up with him in Lake Charles. Was my thesis manuscript, and at least part of it was, and I'm so grateful that I was able to publish it. I'm going to begin with a little civil rights retrospective. And I was, excuse me, I was reading poems at McNeese last Friday. So for Wayne and my wife who were there, I decided to read some different poems, because I know they didn't want to hear the same stuff. A little retrospect on civil rights. Rosa's Winter. This poem is in two parts. Montgomery is blind to the rock fault that slips deep below her jailhouse drone, with strong winds whirling overhead. She slow dances in her daring, careening in a waltz through lazy mint julep days. Her buses make black clouds as they roll down proficient roads, drowning the jingles of caroling bells and dimes trickling fare machines. In no man's land, Rosa sews a quilt to warm her winter nights. She cuts the buckling patches, spreads them across her hardwood floor, then threads a pattern of a young preacher fanning hot coals, stirring flames high as taut-lit crosses. His cadence sounds the beat of weary blues. First a hush, a hum, then foot-stomping thunder, a swirling twister of colored discontent. Do me a favor, as much as I love applause, if you would just save them until the end. The Shaving Mirror. I arrived late with the intent of leaving early. You have eaten dinner, and your body knows the hour has passed for you to be strapped to a pulley, hoisted from your chair, and laid to bed until morning. But I find pleasure in holding your face in my hand. A son's indulgence, to put sweetened bread within your reach like a teething toy, then lean over your drooping torso and groom you, tugging at your stiffened neck, your fingers grabbing and pinching like claws, your face in my hand. Once child's play, now darkened, tarnished glass, shaving your gray, stubborn stubbles, I hum a tuneless song to the bee-like drone of a Norelco. I polish the roughness that pricks my palm, finding a dimly glaring image, a moment not many years ago, when a gentle, loving man calmly rose from his chair, stood stiffly on his legs, and spoke my name. And I knew his stone-like look meant, I am the Father. So be a witness, my second collection is a book written for my son, Patrick, in response to a letter that Patrick had written me on Father's Day. I just realized that I tabbed the wrong poem. And so I struggled with the response to that letter and decided that I would write a book. So it's a book subtitled Songs to Boys of Color. Bucket. Sometimes when I'm the only black man in the room, sitting under the soft, quiet glow of enlightenment, talking about building an education system to save mostly black children, I feel what I felt one day in 9th grade, when I stood in a lunch line and a slimy blob of spit hit the back of my neck like a large, stinging rock. And I turned around to find a sea of white faces sneering back. I feel what I felt years later when a corporate recruiter said, "You're the type we'd like to groom." And I stepped out of the city's tallest building, wearing my blue pinstripe polyester suit, carrying my vinyl attaché case, looking back at a glass tower with carpet so plush I kicked my shoes off and think I had arrived. Until the day my supervisor used the N-word. When he saw a white cop beating an old black man on a downtown street. And I remember the joke he told weeks before, that when cops in Beaumont arrested a drunk, vagrant black man in the middle of the night, they sobered him up by driving him 10 miles and dropping him off at a curbside in Fire, where everybody was the Klan. I feel what I felt and what my daddy and every black man before us felt at some time in our lives, when a white man had something we needed and we couldn't get it without stooping low, bending over, and casting down a bucket, or just keeping our mouths shut. It's a New Orleans poem. I love this city. And, this poem was written one morning, early one morning, just as something came out of nowhere. Here it goes. Stars. New Orleans, a Tuesday, 7:30 a.m. I'm sipping coffee at McDonald's on Canal when two young black men, early 20s perhaps, walk in, buying nothing. Suddenly, I'm aboard a mothership, streaking toward the farthest stars. One, like a fly, bobs the aisles, sweaty in his Crown Royal muscle shirt, gym shorts hanging off his ass, head set in his ears. He pantomimes a singer and dances a Mardi Gras mambo in July with himself. Second lining, silky smoothly across the floor, out the door, onto the parking lot. His own block party, without the block. The other, well-groomed, small backpack, talks loudly, eloquently to himself about home, what it is, it, and should be. Then, facing the faces, he launches a soliloquy of senseless babble, and you sense the other, the voices, a stage, curtain and cast, his fans and followers looking on, inside his head. I'm gazing at stars, dawn drawn to the glow of their wayward worlds. I can't help but pause, watch, and listen. I'm entertained, but scared, because they're black men, and I'm one too, with a son and grandsons of my own. And I can't help but ponder what's loose, what's broken, what's gone wrong, what's the fix. Last poem from the collection. I have written a number of poems. This is actually the second one that I'll read tonight, inspired by my father. You heard the first one. When I walked with him on that long journey of Alzheimer's. This is a poem that was actually written after his passing. It's called Parted. When I was 10 years old, my stepfather fished a sparkling new Schwinn bicycle out of the coulee bordering our backyard. All the boys knew it had been found. Still, I was the envy of the world. Bellerophon sailing in the wing breaths of Pegasus, on my way to conquer Chimera. I named her Silverbell, my first girl. All curves and chrome, her frame, wheels, fenders, headlight, and front spring. I'd spend hours polishing her with 3-in-1 oil and steel wool, tightening every bolt and spoke with wrenches borrowed from my father's toolbox. And then one July Sunday morning, decades after I had become a man, Daddy died. Both parents now gone, I was alone, not knowing what I didn't know and couldn't feel, masking a world broken by grief. Some nights I only heard howling winds, improvisations without refrains, boughs bending roughly in the rifts. untying tangled threads of blood in a newborn heart. I caught hold of wings destined for nowhere. I didn't think about my dying with their deaths until finally I boxed the last keepsake and buried a part of me inside the rusted toolbox I left behind. The third collection, look at this beautiful art. You want to own this. There's a very talented artist, visual artist in St. Martinville named Dennis Paul Williams. Known Dennis for many years. So a few years ago, we decided to do a project that we had talked about for a long time, in which I would write art poetry inspired by his art. And so we started that process, about a 6-month process. He would text me photographs, pics of his art, and then I'd go from there. But I worked one poem at a time, and I want to say this, that Dennis felt very comfortable with my poetry, enough that he didn't want to do any editing. He said, "John, I know you're going to do my art justice. You're going to write what you feel about it." And so we did that. Spirits of the Gods, published by UL Press. I think it's a wonderful book. So many beautiful pieces of literature here. I'm only going to read one poem. It's the last one, titled "The Passage." We hadn't seen our granite hills wash away, gone, stolen, stripped of village, family, and self, taken back to afterbirth. Hundreds of us, humans, packed like livestock in crop, coiled inside a breathless womb. Our senses numbed to cries of death and the stench of waste and disease. Within the claw and muzzle of iron, the pain of memories swelled with every wave that pushed us deeper into bowels of nothingness. Like the okra seeds we had weaved into the blood-soaked wool of our heads. Our babies, not yet conceived, lay with us, crossing the suffocating abyss with no promise of morning sun. We could only hope to bear and care for them, watch them grow, and make seeds of their own to carry the faith of our ancestors. We had no night sky to gaze and ponder the ways of God. Never again would we taste the sweet milk of big dreams foretelling war or rain. Still, our shut eyes gave us light. And so I'm going to read a few poems from Muhammad's Mountain and then maybe wrap up with a couple of new poems from a forthcoming collection, if that's okay with you. I thought I read the whole book. Bill produced a great product, very proud of it. I love this book. We all know the story of Muhammad Ali. I didn't set out to write a book of poems about the champ, but I learned that there had been very little poetry written about Ali, of all people, a poet himself, as well as a great boxer, a great humanitarian, and ambassador for world peace. He was quite the poet himself. So I'll read a couple of poems here. Mirage, Mirage. I picture the fiery red sparkle of a Schwinn-haunted bicycle. Your first Cadillac, gleaming in your wide beckoning eyes. You leaning forward and low, pedaling fast as a jet propeller into a soft Kentucky wind. The turbulent sky of Jim Crow, merely a shimmering mirage on the hot asphalt road. Then Emmett Till, Rosa Parks, Rome, a hero's welcome in Louisville, and we don't serve Negroes. Your Olympic gold tarnished, its sparkled ribbon tightening like a noose around your neck. You on the bridge seeing America sink into the Ohio River. I will give you a taste of some fight poems. Well, maybe I should give you one.
One now.
I had intended to do it. Here's kind of a fight poem. Legend. My granddaddy used to say, took God 6 days to make the world. Took Ali 1 day to turn it upside down. He said Ali trained by wrestling alligators, cutting down trees with one hand. One day, Ali was shadowboxing blindfolded at the bottom of Biscayne Bay and wrestled 2 great white sharks. He said he saw one fight when Ali came out with one arm in a sling, and TKO'd the guy in the 3rd round. Another time, Ali came out in a straitjacket. the kind Houdini used to wear. And about halfway, the first round, the other fighter was on his back taking the long count. He said Ali had a secret knockout punch that he used a couple of times, but his hands were so fast, if you blinked, you missed it. He said one night, Ali was whipping a fella so bad that everybody's television started smoking. Then blew up in the middle of the night. Another time, Ali had been on the ropes for 14 rounds. Tough fight. 15th round, he came out dancing, jabbing, hooking, but his feet never touched the canvas. Not once. The poor fellow he beat said it was like seeing Jesus walking on the sea. Kind of like the last poem from the collection is actually entitled Muhammad Ali. And this poem is patterned after the great poem by Robert Hayden, Frederick Douglass, same pattern. It also includes lyrics adapted from the Negro spiritual Down by the Riverside. When the final trumpet sounds, when we lay our sword, shield, and heavy burden down by the riverside, and we study war no more, this man, this black boxer, this Muslim, this beautiful champion, the greatest of all time, tried, convicted, and stripped of his crown because he clung to his convictions, because he denounced war and refused to kill for a country that would not fight for him to be free. This man of love, peace, and kindness, this child of laughter, this seeker of God, shall be remembered, not with words and films and buildings built of stone, metal and glass alone, but with the strength and courage he inspires in us to stand and sacrifice for what we believe is right. Okay, so one more. The collection, Our Shut Eyes, has sort of changed its focus a little bit. was originally planned to be half original new poems and half selected poems from the other collections. And I decided some months ago to write all original poems, and so the other half of the book is dedicated to the children of the Atlanta child murders. I don't know if you're familiar with that ordeal, but so I don't know, 27, 28 poems there that this year, well, the murder started in July of '79, so, and they continued for several years, so we're now in the 40th anniversary of the child murders. And so it was, I've been, my wife's probably tired of, seeing DVDs and hearing me talk about these murders, but I've been immersed in those children, those 30 black boys, 2 girls, and several young black men for some months now. So here's just one poem, or maybe I should read two. Memorial Drive. Memorial Drive. If 40 years ago you walked Atlanta's Memorial Drive, carefree and without fear, with all your senses on fire, as you strolled slowly through the sights and sounds of a city street, and you were lulled into a state of bliss by the dazzling brightness of day, feeling the future stretch before you like a mirage shimmering where the road ended, as if you could reach out and hold every unlived hour and day in your hands, and take control of your life, seeing beyond every turn and making the crooked paths straight. And if suddenly the sun vanished inside a blanketing gray cloud, and the black boy walked toward you slowly and close enough that you saw the pain and desperation in his eyes, can you honestly say you saw him? Or did his form and future drown with the light? And so the last poem this evening, I hate to leave such a somber note here, but the only child whose body was never found was a foster child named Darren Glass. So this is the poem of that title. Darren Glass. I am one of the innocents, slaughtered by a world that never heard stories we told and songs we sang. I know the rage of night, but you needn't wonder or worry. I'm safe and strong, not a black boy shattered by the weight of hate, the one who became vapor in the twilight of day. I'm sounds stirring cool spring air, the ones you can never name. I'm a mist of blinding fog, faces of clouds, and the whir of birds soaring. I'm not a memory or phantom. I'm not flesh, bone, or dust. I am invisible, but real, like a bud in the garden of your children's dreams. I don't remember my mother and father, how I became glass. But I know that I am Darren, broken yet whole. Thank you all. Aaron said that we would have a few minutes for questions, if anyone has one. I don't want to keep you standing between you and the wine, but if anyone has a question, I'd be more than happy to respond. Yes.
You had a really distinguished multitude of careers. When did you start writing poetry?
Ooh, I would say probably, I didn't know it was a poem. I didn't know what I was doing, but I lost an uncle who was really more like a brother to me back in '94, and I think I was expressing my feelings about the loss of Victor, and I saw the words there, and I didn't know it was a poem, but that's when it began. And I was working in Lafayette. I was running the parish government there at the time, so it was, you know, I found the book not long after that, just browsing, called, I think the title of it was Black Poets. And I said, wow, Black poets. I heard it, Langston Hughes. And I read that entire book. It's more like an anthology of Black poets, dating back, I guess, to Paul Laurence Dunbar. And so that's when the journey began. I stayed in the closet for a long time. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was writing poems. Any others? Yes.
John, first of all, thank you. It's extraordinary. I'm curious, so much of public life is about what is said. Something happens, you have to respond, you have to make a statement of some kind. And yet, so much of poetry is about the silences that govern us.
Yeah.
How have you approached that tension between having to say something and also knowing when a silence is more appropriate?
Yeah, well, I think I sing the Langston Hughes mantra, the song, the essay, Negro Artists in the Racial Mountain. I sing that to myself often. I try to be true, to speak truth. I have to be true to myself and be who I am. And what comes out of me is truth. And I don't think about whether or not that might create a little tension in some places, because that's who I am. I'm standing on top of my mountain, as the youngster would say, beating the tom-tom. So yeah, that comes easy for me, because truth is something pure. Any other questions? Okay, yes ma'am.
You mentioned your interest in educational disparity and the broken systems. Is this an appropriate time to ask how the poet laureate position will be able to help the education of young Black men and their extraordinary death rate in the state?
Well, I actually I've written some strong poems about that. There's one in the collection, Spirits of the Gods, that I've written. I wrote, it was 2016, after the shooting of Alton Sterling. I had strong feelings about the whole historical context of slavery and how all of that shapes contemporary America. It's there. It was there that night, I think, in some way, that young man lost his life. and I've written another poem in response to that killing that'll be in my forthcoming collection. So I don't know, I'm kind of all over the place with that, with history and how those struggles of slavery and Jim Crow and civil rights are here. They're with us today in this room even. They've never left, and they never will in America. So I write poetry that expresses my experiences as I walk through that world. I don't know if I answered your question. I would like to. Yes.
Who would you say are the 3 or 4 poets who most influenced you?
That question always comes up. I never have the right answer for it. There's so many great poets. But yeah, I started reading poems, and I did much more reading than writing. When poetry just discovered me, when I found my love for poetry, the Renaissance writers, I guess were my favorite. And you know, people talk about Langston. Yeah, he was okay. He was okay. But, Robert Hayden, really, I'd say I read more of Hayden than any of the, and actually Hayden was a modernist poet, you know, so it came after the Renaissance, you know, and I can go back to the, I guess, I don't know, the Black Arts era, Mary Baraka, Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni. I love that work. And then the contemporary poets, the day that I found Rita Dove, and I say I found Rita Dove and Yusef Muyaka, I'd read about them in some Newsweek magazine. I hadn't read their poetry. I said, what? No, contemporary poets doing this stuff. And so I delved into that world, and I thought I was like a walking Kumayaka freak for a long time. I just kept, that's all I read for a long time. But now there are so many gifted, talented, contemporary poets. I don't know what the world would be without them, bringing their gifts to the world everywhere. The poets that who taught me in those years at Callaloo and Kalikana, poets like, as Jack mentioned, you know, Terrence Hayes and Tracy K. Smith, Chris Abani. I mean, just so there were so many influences. I'm saying it's kind of a long answer to your question. Just I can't name just 2 or 3. I can even go back to Frost. I mean, Frost, even in graduate school, of all the poetry I guess studied, Frost was my favorite. And I think, and what really, I'm going to shut up here in a second, but you shouldn't have asked that question. What really connected me to Frost was his use of nature as metaphor, really, to talk about the human experience. And this book is very much about many of the poems. I see, not Frost in them, but I see the Frost influence in my first collection. Yes.
I find it fascinating the way you tie in past, present, future, that it's happening, the way you articulate that. How do you know when you're done with a piece?
Yeah. Ooh. Just when the printer runs out of ink. The revision process is, as poets know, it just never ends. But I sort of know. I mean, as my wife would tell you, I go to bed with a poem on my nightstand often, because I thought that I may be on my 10th revision of it, but I thought I had finished it, and I sort of, I tweak it up, and then wake up in the morning, go sit on the patio in the back, and birds and the sun and all that kind of stuff. And I get inspired all over. Rewriting this poem all over again. But you sort of know, really. I mean, I sent the finished manuscript of Our Shut Eyes to a publisher a few weeks ago, and I put it down. That I knew that was it. I'm not now. He's probably going to come back and with some questions or comments that may cause me to tweak a few of those poems up a little bit. But I don't know. It's poetry, you just sort of know. But then again, I go back to this book often, and I read it, and I can always find ways to, in my opinion, create a better poem of a poem that's published in the book. So you just never really stops. But at some point, you just have to say it's baked, it's there, the ice is melted, it's gone, and the poem is now in the hands of the world. Any other questions? I like this.
What do you think of the slam poetry movement?
Oh, well, some of the best poetry I've heard has been slam poetry, really. Guys down in Baton Rouge.
Right.
Donnie Rose, Chancellor Zero Skidmore.
I know them.
Those guys, yeah.
And they work with students.
They work with young people,
Right.
and I think it's great that they give young people an opportunity to express themselves in that genre. I just think it's great. As a matter of fact, the very first time I read a poem publicly was at a slam poetry contest. But I wasn't slamming. And I stood there. It was. I didn't know what I was going. I thought I was going to a poetry reading. They had judges, holding up these cards, right, 7 to 10, and all these young people, went up slamming, doing all this great stuff. And I had a poem that's in this book. It's called Hunting Dragonflies. I'll never forget that. It was just the poem. I had it crumpled up in the back pocket.
Read it.
You read
it.
Yeah. But let me tell you something. So I was shaking. My knees was shaking. You think of perspiring now under these lights. I was like dripping, and I could hardly hold this little piece of paper. So because I was so nervous, because I had been so overwhelmed by that experience of the slam poets doing their thing. And here I was with a little piece of paper. I think I got maybe 2 7s and an 8. I'm going to read Hunting Dragonflies, then I'm getting out of here. Is that okay? My very first reading of a poem publicly. And I said after that day, I'll never, ever, I'll never, ever do that. Go back to that. It's not a long poem. Hunting Dragonflies. If you got lucky, you would swat a big one with a stick that had no other purpose. Just after the sun dropped, when twilight hid the slow pitch, you would hurry too late to pinch her thin, translucent wings before she recovered and fluttered, darting the ghostly plane, even your thoughts would not enter. One day, when a warm beam sealed the mud pond, you held your breath and crept through the cattails to sneak up on a little one. Her wings like brittle leaves, she wilted in the weight of your hand until you sighed and let go. Yet sooner than you blinked, she crisscrossed the sky, taking your breath with her, leaving your scent dangling like a jingling chime. If you got lucky, she'd flit right by your hawk-eyed stare and tangle in the sweet pride. You could reach in, free her, and hold her the way a morning breeze sways a robin's nest. Instead, you put her in your darkened room, the garden of your dreams, cluttered with the memory of your daddy's heavy, coarse hands, and the thump you felt swatting into a drawn light. That's it.